Hey, welcome back, everybody. Well, not welcome back. It's the first time we're doing this. It's called the Matson Podcast, and I'll be joining with my brother, Blake, here in a second. We're going to cover a few topics today. I know for a fact I want to ask him how his birthday went. So without further ado, let's get him on the line.
Hey, Tyler. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to start this podcast with you. My birthday was yesterday.
How old you turn, you old man?
I turned 26.
26. Pushing 30.
Yep, I actually got a MacBook Air for my birthday from Melissa, my wife, and to my surprise, I was not expecting that in the slightest. And my kids, Mason and Elizabeth, Mason is going to be 2 next month, and Elizabeth, she was born in January, so she's only about 7 or 8 months. And actually, I'm sorry, she's 9 months. Wait, is that right?
The old age is already starting to kick in.
Yeah, she's 9 months. Well, hopefully Melissa doesn't hear this podcast because
she don't like me that much anyway.
That'll put me in the doghouse. But anyway, Elizabeth, they took pictures of Elizabeth dressed up in a dress and holding letters that spelled out Dad and put it in a frame. And so there's 3 pictures in a frame that is D-A-D and Dad. And then they got Mason's footprint and handprint, and he is saying the caption is "You're my superhero." It's really sweet. And then there's a picture of he and I on the lawnmower. So I really enjoyed my birthday. Of course, we cooked steak and potatoes, and it was just a really good time. Although funny story. I did almost die last night. Fish cooked the steak. It was really good steak, but there's a piece of fat, and I was so hungry and I guess excited to go play on my new laptop. And I got choked on a piece of steak, and it got down my windpipe, and I was hunched over, gagging, gasping for air, and I've never felt that I was about to die before. And I was reaching into my mouth trying to pull out the piece of steak, but I couldn't quite reach it, and I finally was able to reach it and yank it out. But it was scary. Melissa was even yelling, thinking that something was really wrong. But I'm good. Well, I'm okay now and ready to talk.
That's good. 2 questions. One question rather. The other one's, I'm sorry I couldn't make it to your birthday. I could have sworn it was for today, and I had full intention on making it today.
That's
but
okay. That's all right, buddy.
Your word. The question I have: did you eat the meat after you pulled it out of your throat?
No.
That's wasteful.
I pulled it out and threw it in the floor, and then coughed up parts of the rest of the steak, and then picked it up, threw it in the trash, and went back to eating my steak as if it never happened.
Oh, that's good. That's good. All right, so we got you something. It won't be in the mail for a little while.
Really? What is it?
A surprise. I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah, I figured as much, but it doesn't hurt to ask, right?
Yeah, true. What did you think you were going to get by mail? What did you think she was going to get you?
I figured she was going to get me some clothes, and I didn't really think she had the money to do this. So I was fully expecting, if I got anything, to just get some candy and clothes, and that would have been fine with me. But I'm going back to school to be a teacher, and I do a lot of it's completely online, and all the work, or a lot of work that I do at T-Mobile, it's very helpful to manage my customer base on the laptop. So I've got a bunch of files and programs, and now I'm making some templates to help keep track of sales for week over reports. So I'm just blessed to have it. It's helping me be more productive. Of course, it'll help with my church work as well. So, and of course, we're actually going to use this to do a rough draft recording for our first video on our new channel. Of course, obviously, the more equipment we get, we'll be able to have cleaner recordings and where they're more balanced. This is our first run through, so obviously just excuse if Tyler sounds a little bit louder than I do, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we're only 2 hours away, B. Only 2 hours away. Well, while you're talking about the MacBook, what brand is that from?
Well, MacBook is Apple.
Okay. And T-Mobile sells them, I'm guessing?
No, T-Mobile doesn't sell any type of laptops. They're strictly, which it would be good if we did sell them, but the closest thing we sell to a laptop would be the iPad or a tablet.
Well, that's why I'm confused, because I thought that was like a different brand of an iPad.
No, it's the Apple brand of a laptop.
Oh, okay. So it's like, okay, I got you.
Yeah, it runs a lot smoother than a PC, and it has a lot of cool software things for recording and doing music and stuff. So a lot of people that record prefer. I'm using GarageBand now to record us, actually.
Okay, I've never heard of GarageBand.
Yeah, you can actually utilize it on your smartphone. It doesn't work as well because it's more for. I think it's more for going and editing what you've already recorded on your, computer. But you can do what we're doing now. It's just you have to go in and add the measures individually. So a lot of techno bumbo jumbo, but it works a lot better, and you have a lot more options on the PC version, or the Mac version.
Well, speaking of the techno world, what's new in the phone business?
Well, the Samsung released the Galaxy Note 9. It's new out. It's $1,000, so it's the same price point as the iPhone X. So that's pretty steep compared to the S9 that's currently $720, which was their last release for their Galaxy series. The iPhone will have their keynote. Apple will have their keynote for their new products September the 12th. So no one knows what they are, but it's going to be a very exciting time. They'll announce when iOS 12 will be available, when the new iPhones will be out, and the world is excited to see what they're going to do because, last year they mixed things up with the X and didn't really make any big changes between the 7 and the 8. So very curious to see what they're going to bring to us this year and what iOS 12 will be bringing.
Maybe an iPhone 9. And they bring back the aux cord. Hole. Yeah,
they're not going to bring back they're not going to bring the headphone jack back.
Well, here's my problem with that. They take that away, and then they'd make a gadget to where you can just plug it into the charging port, so you can actually listen to music that way.
Yes. Well, that's if you.
But there's no sense in doing that, because you didn't have a problem. Then you made the problem. Then you made a fix for that problem that you didn't even need to have.
Well, and a lot of people share that, and I'm not going to share my opinion just yet on which I prefer, but I'll tell you the explanation and reasoning for it. Their reasoning for it was to make the external speaker louder, and by getting rid of the headphone jack, it made the phone water resistant, and it made the speaker actually a lot louder and left more room inside for processing power so that it'll run faster and more smoothly. It had also, most things now are Bluetooth. For instance, AirPods. The AirPods sound really good. I have a pair of them. They work with all my Apple products seamlessly. They're the best headphones I've ever owned. So I never use mine. However, my vehicle doesn't support Bluetooth, so I do plug it up in the car. So one major problem that you run into is that you don't get the option to charge your phone while it's plugged up to the headphone jack adapter, and you can go buy a splitter, but that's a little bit annoying. So then that's why they introduced with the 8th generation wireless charging. But for me, when I'm driving down the road, I don't have the ability to set it on a wireless charger. I guess I could invest in one, but Samsung, in their S9, their Note 9, Note 8, all of it still has a headphone jack, and it's water resistant as well. And the S9 is the loudest phone you will ever hear because of Dolby Atmos, which is surround sound in a phone, and they still have the headphone jack. So, I don't really miss the headphone jack, but they're not going to bring it back. Although a lot of people say it would be cool, they would not go backwards with their technology because it would just slow down what their progress. But ultimately, the world we're moving to is going to be wire free. It's just a matter of a few transitional years till we get there. But ultimately, I'd love to see everything be solar powered. Then you would never have to charge your device. You wouldn't everything. You could just listen to your music wirelessly. You can already charge your AirPods and charge your smartwatches and things like that wirelessly, but you have to plug your wireless charger up to the wall. But the moment they invent a wireless charger that's solar powered, where you set all your devices on it, will change the world.
Well, here's my problem. I have to go out and get you another present.
Why is that?
Because I got the AirPods.
Oh, wow. Where'd you get them?
Not going to tell you. But I guess I'll use them for me and I'll get you something else.
Well, I appreciate that. But, yeah, I do have the AirPods. I got them from T-Mobile about a month or so back because we sell them now. And but just make sure, for yourself that you hook it up because once you set it up, they just sound great. But, yeah, I appreciate you doing that. That was that would have been a real surprise, but good thing I told you I had them, or it'd been an awkward situation.
Well, that Christmas that I bought a Keurig, you bought a Keurig, and Mom bought a Keurig.
Yeah, we just gave each other Keurigs. That was funny.
And nobody said nothing to nobody. So we just thought we were going to be all slick and smooth, having the best present.
Yeah, that reminds me of a podcast I was listening to. There's a stand-up comedian, I can't remember his name, you may know, but he was talking about he had the greatest present ever because his wife had told him that she wanted PJs for Christmas, and he's like, PJs aren't that expensive, so he went and bought about 18 pairs of different types of PJs and wrapped them up separately and put them under the tree, and the whole family's gathered around. And anyway, they start opening presents, and he's really hyped up that he's got his wife the most amazing gift ever, the best thing under the tree. And anyway, everyone opens their presents, and then there's a lot of pressure on him because he's got a lot of money because he's he's famous, So anyway, he starts. The wife opens the first present and says, "Oh, PJs." And then she goes to open the second one, and then she realizes it's also PJs. And then the guy's dad is in the background. He's just laughing because he sees all the other presents under the tree look identical. So then, by about package 17, they're all gathered around the tree, going, "Come on, PJs! Come on, PJs!"
That sounds like somebody. I haven't heard that joke before, but it definitely sounds like somebody I've definitely watched before.
Yeah, I'll let you. I'll find who it was. I'll go back through my history and tell you. He was really funny though.
I know a couple of the stand-up comedians are doing podcasts now, like John Capirulo. I don't know if that was him.
This guy didn't wear a shirt on his stand-up routine.
He doesn't wear a shirt?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Bert. Bert, what's his last name?
I don't know.
Well, he's very funny. He talks about the time he was in the mafia over the country. Oh, that was funny. You definitely have to listen to that. That's one of his best jokes, in my opinion.
Speaking of stand-up comedians, who's the guy that is from Australia? He's on Netflix, and he's really like got dry humor, and he's got an Australian accent. Well,
is it a new one?
It's on there now. I watched it not long ago, but I'll say this. I couldn't watch much of it because he doesn't have the cleanest mouth, and there's only so much vulgarity I can take before I just have to turn it off. But he did tell one joke, and I was sitting in my recliner watching, and it was so funny that I leaned back in my recliner to laugh, and then he made the joke even more funny, and I fell out of my recliner. The recliner fell back behind me. And then everybody in the room was laughing about that more than what they were laughing about me. But he was talking about gun control, basically. And
oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the whole joke, so of course it's not going to sound as funny.
Yeah, that's like a 20-minute joke right there.
He's talking about the guy with the chainsaw. What?
I can't remember. I can't remember the guy. Jim Jeffries.
Yeah.
Is that him? Yeah, he's funny. But he's an atheist, so of course you wouldn't like him that much.
He said people in Texas don't walk around with their chainsaws, and then to me, when he was talking about Texas and chainsaws, what made it funny to me was the underlying tone of in Texas walking around with a chainsaw would scare people because of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Which wasn't even part of the joke. That's what made me start laughing. And then it just got on and on when security came up to him and told him he had to put the chainsaw away. And he was like, well, this is my protection chainsaw. It was just so funny. I wish you could hear the whole joke. But yeah, it is about 20 minutes to do the setup before he gets to the bit. And it's just wonderful. So, but do you know who Dan Cummins is?
Crazy with the capital F.
Do you like Dan Cummins?
I love Dan Cummins, actually. I've listened to just about every single one of his stand-up.
Well, Dan Cummins has a podcast called Time Suck. You need to listen. And I'm actually, do you know what Patreon is, or Patreon?
Yeah, I've heard of a few Patreons on YouTube.
Yeah, so Patreon is basically a way you can support your favorite, causes, I guess, or whatever. But I am actually a Patreon subscriber to his podcast channel, and but it's time. You're a time sucker when you listen, right? And then you're a space lizard when you get secret content, and it's great. Every Monday, he releases an episode that's about 2 hours long, and us space lizards secretly vote in the content. So it's things like the Amityville Horror, World War II, just different things like that. And it's both educational, hilarious, because, he's a stand-up comedian, the way he tells a story. And, you can listen for 2 hours straight, and it just be great. And he's got, like, a cult following. And so, yeah, I know you're not big into podcasts, which is funny.
I'm pretty. I wouldn't say I'm huge in it, but I've given a lot of podcasts chances. Stone Cold Steve Austin has a podcast. Chris Jericho has a podcast.
Well, you need to listen to Dan Cummins. It's not called Dan Cummins. It's Time Suck, but dude, I would do anything for that guy because of the content he supports that he puts out. I support it, and yes, he does say some bad words here and there, but ultimately it's for a good cause. And it's just the most entertaining thing. I can just go back in time and listen to all his episodes. If you think of any world topic, he's talked about it, And I've learned so much. There's things I didn't know about. And he doesn't say it from his agenda. He tells the whole story. He did the suicide of Bud Dwyer. He did that last month. Have you seen that video on YouTube?
The suicide of who?
Bud Dwyer.
No, I've never heard of him.
Well, don't. He was a. He started off as just a regular worker, worked his way up into politics. He was a teacher, and he worked his way up into politics. Anyway, he became the state treasurer, and then the governor and him had a falling out, and there was scandal. He didn't do anything wrong, but he was going to jail for 50-something years, which would be the end of life, and they'd have taken all of his money. So anyways, because of, and if you listen to the 2-hour-long episode, it makes a little bit more sense, because when you just watch the video, you're like, well, why did he do that? You shouldn't have done that. But anyway, he calls a press conference together. Then once everybody's there, he pleads his innocence, takes out a gun, and shoots himself on live television. Commits suicide. And it's on TV. It's on YouTube right now. But it's very, very graphic. But yeah, he sucked that, is what it's called, and learned a lot about that. But there's some really interesting things on there.
Well, I mean, that can open us up to talking about, other things and just technology, what's new in technology world, the conspiracies we have talked about in the past.
Well, go ahead.
What I was really wanting to talk to you about is something I haven't been able to understand. What in the heck is going on with the Nike stuff? Like, I don't understand what the big deal is. Why is everybody burning Nike all of a sudden?
Well, I'm not the biggest follower of all like that kind of politics, but basically what's going on. Are you familiar with the Colin Kaepernick situation?
No, I never heard of the guy, but I was doing a little research, and I think he's the guy who started the I'm not going to salute in the Pledge of Allegiance or something like that.
He started by taking a knee at the Pledge of Allegiance, which, can be interpreted in multiple different ways. So to not lose the listenership of certain viewers, we probably shouldn't divulge into that too much with limited information on it, because there are good points and bad points to it. But anyway, it started a cult following of the rest of those people, football players kneeling, and then people saying it's disrespectful, and then now it spreads around the country where people kneel during it. And so basically he sucked at football. He's a football player in the NFL. He was a quarterback, and he absolutely, according to his record, just sucked. Well, anyways, so he's sidelined. So he does this to get attention in a lot of people's eyes, because he's not going to make it in the NFL, or not at least make it big time. So then what he does is he starts doing that, getting his attention, and then he gets deals of people. Well, anyway, he gets cut from his team, and nobody will sign him. Because in the NFL, it's not like in college where you just play for the same team. You work on a contract. In your contract, they offer you an extension or they don't. So he's a free agent right now, meaning that no one wants to touch him because of the scandal that he's involved with, because whether you believe in it or not, it's controversy. He's not just a regular football player. You're going to have people, even if you personally support him, you're going to have thousands of, if not millions of people that don't respect what he does and what he stands for, so they're going to boycott your team. And so from an owner's standpoint, you're going to lose money. So no one will sign him, right? So now Nike has basically sponsored him and his message. And for those people that say Nike's being anti-American and supporting his anti-American cause, they're burning their Nikes and are not affiliated with Nike anymore. But Nike did it as a publicity stunt to take advantage of this movement going on. And like I said, whether you believe in it or not is your opinion, but it's an opinion that you either come across as anti-American or racist. There's no in between, because of how our country is divided with our beliefs in politics right now. There's hardly
everybody's too PC, in my opinion.
It doesn't matter what side you fall on. Usually, you may be extremely liberal or you may be extremely conservative, but there's no in between where everybody can agree to disagree. Even it's a very sad thing, and I wish that people, when they're arguing about something or talking about it, they would just listen with the intent to try to learn something. But it seems like people just listen for the intent of how to better their argument against it. And I've never seen a political argument on Facebook where somebody said, oh, you know what? you completely changed my viewpoint. Thank you. No, it's always, no, you're wrong. You're dead wrong. You know, blah, blah, blah. We're done. I'm not going to be friends with you anymore. And that's just so sad.
Yeah. That's why I don't really like social media or anything like that. Because for one, you know, with the big YouTube stars and all the movie stars and all that, they have the clickbait and try to get. I just don't follow all that. Try to make a buck off something or try to get, I guess, hometown famous.
Yeah,
and
well,
I don't ride with that.
Social media is a reflection of our society. Without that, we couldn't really gauge where we stood as a society. And, you know, now you know what people feel. And before, you just have to be told what people felt. A politician could tell you that, you know, half the country supports an idea. But when you see it on a regular basis, you can make that own decision whether you do or don't. But, you know, speaking of politics, and this is something where I know that you haven't done your research on it, and, you know, you may not be equipped to talk about it, but I just want to know, if you were asked on the street and someone came up to you and said, what do you think about our immigration policy? Could you hold a conversation with it, and could you at least share an opinion of what you think with limited information, if not any information?
Well, to be honest, I have no information on that. But in my opinion, who's to say somebody can't come over and do the job if no one else is wanting to do the job?
Yeah, and a lot of people share that.
I mean, but that's with me having no information. It's not, you know, everybody has a problem with them coming over and taking our jobs, but it's jobs that we don't want to do. Just like when the Chinese were building the railroads, everybody started having a problem with it, but nobody was wanting to get out on those railroads.
True.
Nobody wanted to go into the caves and mine. Nobody wanted to do that.
Right. But here's the problem. That you said is exactly what most people would say. But the ultimate thing is that people really aren't concerned with them stealing our jobs, but politicians try to use that as a scare tactic, because in the 50s and 60s and possibly 70s and 80s, that was what people were afraid of. Now our society doesn't want to work. We would prefer to hire them. But here's the problem. What I feel like, you do have to regulate who comes into the country.
Yeah, of course. Of course. You can't just have anybody come in or, you know, just...
Well, there's a lot of people that think it should be an open border policy or really easy to become a citizen.
That's how terrorists happens. You can't just let anybody come in. Just like you can be born here and still be a terrorist, but at the same time, we can be watchful on most things. Because if we weren't so watchful, there'd be more school shootings, more church burnings. There'd be more of that.
Yeah, but you know, here's where I start to really get concerned. My coworker, his parents came to America with a green card. They were legal. They're not citizens, but they have work visas, so they're permitted to work in the United States. And they had him in America, so obviously he's a naturalized citizen. So he's an American citizen, but his parents aren't. But anyway, his grandmother still lives in Mexico, and he was sharing with me something that I figured would be all over the news. He, as a Mexican person, stated that yes, good, bad people ruin it for the good. But he said he doesn't want it to be easier for people to come over. He said now it shouldn't take as long. You shouldn't have to wait 5 years or an extended period of time to have a trial to see whether you might get to stay or whether you might get deported. But he said at the same time, we still need to be tough on who we let in, because right now in Mexico,
El Chapo, they got the biggest drug cartel going on in the world.
Well, the drug cartel runs the country, but the biggest epidemic that scares me more is that, you know what the black market is, right?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times the black market, we know it affects our economy, but we're not afraid of it in terms of like harm. But what's big on the black market in Mexico right now is harvesting from children their organs from children. And they have to have the military circle elementary schools in certain areas because people were just running in, grabbing the kids, taking them out, stealing their organs, and selling them to rich people that don't want to wait on a waiting list when they need a transplant. And that's just despicable. And so my coworker shared with me, he said, those people don't need to come to America. They're going to pose as just wanting good jobs, but ultimately they have bad intentions. And another viewpoint that he said is that a lot of people that pretend like they're family just to take advantage to get over here. So you might say, oh, well, just let certain families come. But that would be how they sneak over. So it is very sad that a few bad apples ruin it for the good apples. But he said ultimately there's a lot of crime there. But, Dan Cummins, today, I was listening to The Secret Suck, which I'm vowed to not share, but just a little tidbit of it. He was talking about an episode that he did a couple weeks ago about his immigration, and something really that he said really got my attention. And that was, let's say you're at a restaurant, and the person says, oh, it'll take 10 minutes before I can take your bill for your food, right? Well, you're going to say, okay, well, 10 minutes sucks to have to give you my money, but I'll wait. But if they come back and say, oh, it's going to be 3 hours before I can take your money, it's going to be easier for you to just just not pay and leave and deal with the consequences because you're probably not going to get caught. And if you do, it's not going to be that big of a deal. So Dan Cummins was saying these people just like that, they don't necessarily want to break the law, but because it takes so long and they don't even know if they're guaranteed a spot, might as well just chance breaking the law because it's too hard. And that's how he related it, and that made sense to me. But then I was watching an episode on YouTube about how they separate children at the border, and there's such an uprising about it, and it's just absolutely wrong. And it is. But let's say me as a dad, as Blake, let's say I just go for no reason at all and break a law. Let's say I take a gun and go to my neighbor's house and shoot him dead. Am I going to have to go to jail? Yes. What's going to happen with my kids? Well, they're going to stay with Mel. If Mel's not there, there's no next of kin. What's going to happen? The government's going to hold them. We do that in America for criminals. So the people at the border that are being separated from their parents are because their parents are wanted felons that are going to jail, and they don't have family, and they don't know who the family is, so they have to hold them temporarily. And we do the same thing in the United States. So it's one of those things where you can't commit crime no matter what the reason and expect to get away with it. And people are too liberal-minded when it comes to just letting people off the hook saying we shouldn't separate the kids. Well, you either have two options. Let the kids free and have no food or water and let them try to figure out how to get back to Mexico on their own, or let them go to jail with them, or let the bad guy go. So, that's just something that's been on my mind that I wanted to kind of put out there. But, there are, like I said, there are good people that deserve the chance. It should be easier. But when you break the law, even though the law sucks, it's there for our protection. So, but that's enough about immigration.
Yeah. But to touch on what you said earlier about, you said you don't know why it's not more in the news. Of course it's not. Nobody's going to want to put the good ideas of why something's going to potentially hurt the government. And that's why whenever something bad happens in the government, there's a huge crisis going on right after. So nobody is paying attention to what's going on in the government.
Well, I used to believe that, but now it seems like all the news media, all they want to do is focus on on Donald Trump. And
well, that's just because everybody's against him. Not everybody, but the majority is against Donald Trump. So, of course, they know that's ratings, number one.
Well, they're too worried about defending themselves rather than telling the truth.
I don't think they're defending themselves. I think they're just doing it for ratings. They're taking what certain groups of people have said, and they're using their platform to make themselves more respectable and get more views.
Yeah, I know. It's just very sad that it has to be that way because they're supposed to represent the views of the people, and they don't. They represent the few, or maybe the many, but there's still half the country that they don't equally represent, and the media is to blame with what brought this whole conversation on, that we're too divided as a country. If you're not conservative and you're a liberal, then you're an enemy. And if you're an enemy, if you're a liberal, you view a conservative as racist. So, it's very sad, but people, that's why I asked originally if you had any information on it, but people will just jump on the bandwagon before they have all the facts. They'll take what the news said as their facts when it's just the truth stretched. Because
that's what conspiracies come into play. They get I don't want to make fun of by the government and the news and all that for being conspiracies, because we are theoretically letting everybody know their true colors, and they don't want their true colors to be known, even though some conspiracists have figured it out. So they make it out to be conspiracists are crazy people, and they just have wild, crazy thoughts, and then they pick the weird conspiracists Bigfoot had sex with the Loch Ness, and they make it out to be how every conspiracist thinks, and it's not like that.
Well, there are some conspiracies that I will try to think maybe are real, and there might be some real. But here's what punches a hole in the whole trying to defend these conspiracy theorists. There's a guy, I can't remember his name. I want to say it's Alex Rogan, but I know that's not correct, so don't quote me on it. I'll follow up if anybody has a question about it. But there's a mass school shooting. I don't remember if it's Columbine. I think it might be, or it's another one that may be even bigger than that. Mass school shooting, right? He gets on his talk show and says that it's a conspiracy theory, and all the parents of the kids that were killed are paid actors. And this is...
No, there are such things as paid actors. They're cry actors. When something traumatic happens, the news people do pay these actors.
Yes, that's true.
And they have been caught multiple times, and they still use the same actor sometimes.
But they're trying to say this school shooting did not happen. And
that's the far-fetched freaking conspiracies. You can't just go off. That's what I just said, Blake, is that you take one person who has this craziest conspiracy, and it bunches up to where all the conspiracies are crazy.
I followed that statement up with, there are some that I believe, but ultimately this guy has proved many conspiracies to be true, and is very, respected.
Persuasive.
He's very respected in that sector of conspiracy theories, and has proven many to be true. But this one, it'd be different to say it could happen and there are theory, but to definitely say it happened. Okay, let's say my kid, Mason, is in school, and he tells me that I'm a paid actor and that my tears are fake when I'm mourning the tragic loss of my son. When you put yourself in those parents' shoes, you shouldn't bring that up as a conspiracy theory. Or as a conspiracy. So
that goes to say, yes, that's true. Be aware of people's feelings. But if somebody truly believes that the kids were faked, the deaths were faked, then of course he's not going to have any remorse talking about the kids that didn't really die. He assumes, or he thinks that they didn't die and that they, got fake deaths and not DNAs, new Social Security and stuff.
Well, maybe that may be the case, but you see, if I'm going to come up with a conspiracy theory that involves telling people that their little baby precious children did not die and that they're paid actors, I'm going to have some evidence and some proof before I use my strong platform and influence to try to tell other people that. But anyway, that's just one. I mean, there are multiple others that could be.
Well, what are some conspiracies that you could get along with, like you could follow? But you said you have a few that you actually could believe that be true. What are some of your?
Well, anytime government conspiracies, I believe. I don't know for sure about JFK. I believe that he was murdered. Obviously, he was murdered, but I feel like it could have some involvement with the government. It just seems very.
Yeah, anytime somebody speaks out of what the government really wants to let out, they end up dead. Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, he wanted those slaves freed. Boom, he's dead. Martin Luther King wanted
Abraham Lincoln.
Whites and blacks to be together. Boom, he's dead. This is a far stretch, but Tentacion wanted there to be. He wanted to bring the blacks and whites together in our day and age, and he got gunned down. But that was the far one. Don't get on me on that one. I'm just I'm an X supporter. I love X. But that's what I was just saying is that.
Go back to Abraham Lincoln. Are you saying that you believe that Abraham Lincoln was a conspiracy that the government killed him?
No, I'm saying that Southern government officials did not want to give up their right to have black slaves.
Yes, that's true. That's a fact. But are you trying to say that you believe there's a conspiracy behind his death?
No, I'm saying that they killed him. They planned a murder. They had an actor kill him.
Is that your theory?
Yeah, that's definitely my theory. Same way with Martin Luther King.
Well, all of the more modern day ones, yes. But Abraham Lincoln, I can about 99.99% sure it was not a government conspiracy. And John Wilkes Booth, that shot Abraham Lincoln, hated Abraham Lincoln. Made his hatred known because he did not support his ideas and beliefs and hated him as a president and did not want to submit to his will. And
the last one was JFK.
He thought that he would be able to be more famous and that the people wanted him to kill him. So in his own memoirs, when he fled the scene after his elaborate death, because it wasn't just him, they actually planned to kill they were trying to set up to kill the whole upper government. One guy just got scared and left. But anyway, after John Wilkes Booth did it, he hurt his leg, right? So he had to run away and abandon. He was anxious to read the paper to see how glorified he would be, right? He was made out to be despicable and cowardly, and this really upset him. But he had a hatred, a proven, documented hatred, and it went on for years and years. He wrote books for years and talked about in his plays, because back then he was like the top actor in the world. He was the most famous actor in the area. And, we didn't have the same Hollywood as what we have now. But he made it very publicly known from the get-go that he hated him. Just like there's people now that pledge their hatred for Trump. But he even said he wanted to kill him. He planned his assassination. He brought a group of his friends together and some of them went to go through with it and failed. Some of them got scared and ran away. But he walked straight in there, and because of how famous he was, the security guard let him come in and let him kill Abraham. And Abraham loved this actor. Abraham Lincoln loved the actor. He always loved to come to his shows. And that's how he knew he could get away with killing it. But you got to think, it's easier to think that JFK was planned because of the security and all the problems going on. But the difference with this is the country was already at war. And they didn't have the protection they had back then. You could be the president of the United States and just, driving your horse and carriage on the middle of a back road during the middle of a war where the South, were trying to succeed, and he didn't have protection. They didn't do that back then. They just were average.
So you don't think that any of the Southern government officials or anybody that didn't agree with Abraham Lincoln's thoughts, they didn't help plan in the assassination of him?
They may have planned.
Because you just said that John Wilkes Booth brought a bunch of guys together.
Yeah, a bunch of guys that were his own cult, his own actor buddies. It was 2 people, not a bunch of, I shouldn't have said a bunch of guys. It was either 2 or 3 people. One of them was supposed to kill one of the government officials. He got scared, ran away. He actually got drunk as heck to go do it and then chickened out. He went to the same hotel and stayed the night in the hotel, and that's how they caught him, because he checked in under his real name and paid in that hotel that he was supposed to assassinate him in, and that's how they were able to catch him and prosecute him. The government prosecuted him. So if there was a government conspiracy to kill the vice president and whoever was third in line to the presidency, and
you don't think that they would have, if they wouldn't have processed him, that he wouldn't have been, that wouldn't have shown a light to their actual plan?
I mean, it's easy to just say, oh, it could be the South doing it. But when you listen and do a 2-hour-long study on all the facts that disprove the theory that it was a government conspiracy, because actually do this, all right? If you don't do anything else, go to your Apple Podcast app on your phone. Go, just type in Time Suck, which is Dan Cummins' channel. Find Assassination of Abraham Lincoln. It's 2 hours long. When you have time, listen to it. And it talks all about John Wilkes Booth. It hardly mentions Abraham Lincoln, but it talks about what's going on in the culture. It talks about him from a little baby all the way up, and really will bust a hole in the theory. But just do your research on it and see what you think, and we can reconvene on that matter. But I just very firmly don't think that Abraham Lincoln, at least, was government conspiracy. And, it was thousands of years ago. It was a very long time ago. So, history could have been wrong. History could be rewritten. But more things that happened in our parents' day, Martin Luther King, JFK, his brother, all of that is a lot more feasible to me to be a government conspiracy. But you know what? We're going to know very soon, because I think it's in the year 2022, somewhere in there. The JFK archives, the true archives, are going to be released. The ones that the government demanded cannot be released for that many years because all the people involved would be dead. So that way there couldn't be any kind of responsibility for it. So we will know the truth very soon, but I honestly think that nobody does know right now, but it's going to be huge, because they're going to release all the details, not just the ones that were publicly known. So I don't know what's all in those files, but I've seen a lot of videos that explain that this is huge.
I didn't know anything about it, so I'll be looking for it now.
Well, it's going to be a few years, so you'll probably forget.
Nah, I don't forget. I'm an elephant.
Well, is there anything else burning on your mind before we end this week's podcast?
Well, I don't have nothing, B.
All right, man. Well, it was good talking conspiracy with you and just catching up. And once we get this posted, maybe you listeners, anything we said that wasn't true. I mean, we're not looking at research. I'm driving down the road. What are you doing?
I'm laying in bed playing on my new puppy.
So, I mean, obviously we're not doing any research to say these things are facts. I've said many things that are cited, but I haven't listed the sources or the exact facts. I've just paraphrased. So, feel free to correct me, correct Tyler. Leave a comment if you thought anything was interesting or want us to talk more about it.
Exactly, I was about to say that.
But we're definitely going to do some research about these statements, because I really want you to listen to that video or that podcast and then tell me that you believe it was a government conspiracy with Abraham Lincoln. But anyway, you want to do our outro, bro?
Well, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for coming through this week. Maybe we can sneak another one out. Who knows? You know, it's getting towards the end of the week, I think. Right? And it's Friday?
Yeah, it's Friday, but we may not get this posted until Monday.
Well, I just want everybody to know what day we posted it. We did it Friday. We're lazy. We didn't get out until Tuesday. No, but thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Share with your friends if you like to listen to two middle-aged 20-year-olds talk about conspiracies, technological things in the field of the. You know, I'm not big on technology. That's my brother Blake. So he teaches me a lot, and he helps me a lot with the phones. And maybe next time we can talk about up and coming movies, things going on in the music scene, things going on in the sports. I don't want to stick with just conspiracies, even though I love talking about it. You know, that could be something. But you know, I'd very much like to check out or talk about the new movies and everything like that, and whatever's in the news.
All right, well, thanks for having me on the show, and I'll talk to you next time, and y'all have a good night, or day, whatever time you listen to this podcast.
All right, good night, all.
Good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed wake you up.